Yeah, one thing I also wanted to ask you about, tradition's a pretty big part of your family lineage and history, as mine. Unfortunately, my grandfather's gone. I lost my dad to cancer 10 years ago, but I still got his Browning shotgun in the safe here. And I saw a video that you had a special shotgun that was passed down to you, and I'd like to hear that story. And I know my listeners would appreciate it if they haven't heard it before.
Yeah, I've for 25 some odd years, I have shot Benelli shotguns. I love them for their seriously their utter reliability and simplicity. They've got me out of some real tight spots. They just if I'm gonna travel halfway across the world, you better believe there's gonna be a Super Black Eagle 3 packed. And I've got plenty of them. In fact, I came home from Argentina and spent a day and a half laying guns out on the table and cleaning and scrubbing and replacing and just getting them right again, right? And I grew up shooting. Believe it or not, it's hard. It's hard, man. You realize, Brian, it's been 30 some odd years since we shot lead in America. I think 91, 92 that we made the conversion. 89, 90, somewhere in that time frame, we made the conversion over. And back in the day, I can remember I was down in Texas. I'd driven to a little hole-in-the-wall outdoor store in the middle of nowhere, not too far from the Mexican border, to go buy some ammo because I was going to go duck hunting. And walked right to the rack and picked up some 2 3/4 inch high brass lead fives. And the boy pointed that newfangled stuff called steel shot. And we didn't buy it because we didn't have to at the time. Next year we had to start shooting it. And at the time, my entire shotgun lineup was mine, my dad's, my granddad's, and maybe my uncle's, and they were all 2 3/4 inch pumps or semi-automatic. You know what I'm saying? And the gun I had with me down there was an 870 Wingmaster, modified barrel. And I had grown up shooting a Remington 1100, and that steel shot really changed duck hunting and the way we think and the way we approach. And I think it changed as much for worse as it did maybe for good. In just terms of mentalities, how the ammo manufacturers tried to overcompensate for the lightness of steel and the unperformance of steel. And I know it's come a long way since the good old days, since the bad old days of steel shot, but still. So anyway, back to your story. I just wanted to kind of lay out of what I shoot and how I grew up shooting. But my grandmother lived in an old Delta home that she had been born in. And at some point in time in family history, it was a 2-story house. They had raised the ceilings to about 14 foot, and the entire second story became like this massive attic. Think American Pickers type, epic proportion, built in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And one day I was up visiting her, and it was a big house, and she would, on a hot summer day, she would shut all the doors to all the rooms, and keep the air conditioning just in a couple of rooms, right? And so we were sitting there visiting, watching TV or something. And she said, "Oh, I found something I want you to have." And she came back a little later and handed me this long croaker sack. It was a canvas gun sleeve, dry rotted and everything else. And she had found an old Colt double barrel hammer gun up in her attic and handed it to me and said, "I want you to have this. I don't know whose it was." And that's, I took it home, and I went to a little gun store nearby, showed it to him, get it looked at, and the first thing he told me was, "Son, don't ever shoot this gun. Don't ever shoot this gun. It's too old. You do not want to, it's got these black powder shotgun shell. You don't want to shoot it. It's chambered 2.5, not 2 3/4 inches. Just trust me. It's a Damascus barrels. They'll burst if you try to shoot conventional loads and everything else." So I was 15 years old. I'm 58 now. And for decades, I took it out and wiped it down with oil and looked down the barrels of it and wondered about it. I wondered about it, and I think we figured out. I think we somehow just kind of did some figuring of who it must have been. And it probably my grandmother's granddaddy's. on her mama's side. And my grandmother passed in the mid '80s or whatever, and they were cleaning out the house. And that Christmas, my mother gave me this little drawing, a framed drawing. It was nice. I looked around to see if I was going to show it, hold it up and show it to you. And hang on just a second. I want to show you this drawing. See that?
Oh, yeah.
That's a little drawing my mother gave me for Christmas that year, and I looked at it, and you can tell it's just a skiff with some duck hunters and they're pointing. There's ducks in the back, and
right.
Somebody holding what appears to be a Springer Spaniel, which is odd for that date and era. But nonetheless, I looked at it and I thanked her very much. I used to raise Springers on the other side of my family. They raised Springers since World War II, and I was a Springer fan. That's what I noticed first and foremost. But anyway, I thanked her. She said, "Well, honey, look at the initials on it. Look who did it." I looked at it, and S. McNeil. That didn't ring a bell. She said, "That's your great grandmother," which is my grandmother's mother, who was also born and raised in that house. And she said, "You know what's so interesting is she used her maiden name." We found that in a pile of drawings with her maiden name on it, and the fact she did her maiden name, you know, she was probably 16, 17 years old, living in that little Delta home, and just drawing in art class or whatever she was doing, like a lot of Southern belles of that era, probably just depicting her surroundings. She said, you know, so it's not hard to imagine that whoever that is shooting that gun was probably holding that shotgun your grandmother gave you years ago.
Wow.
You know, I'm like, wow, I never thought of it that way, Brian. And as I look at that picture, it's just hanging right there in the den. I look at it often. As I look at that picture, that drawing, it's like my ancestors start to speak to me. My duck hunting roots started to speak to me from way back in the 1800s. And I did a little research, and, you know, they make black powder shells now. There are companies that specialize in this type of ammo for shooting these old guns like this one day. Right. And I reached out to a client that traded in those kind of guns, and he put me in touch with his gunsmith. His gunsmith said, "Hey, send me some stuff." I sent him some pictures, most especially of the barrels. He called me up and he said, "Son, don't shoot that gun. The bores are bad." like every other Damascus barrel made. He said there were 10,000 of those guns made, and 9,900 of them have bad bores. And sure enough, there's a big rusty patch right in the middle of those bores from where black powder got left seated too long and began to corrode. And he said, besides that, those old Damascus barrels, you know, these modern pressures, it's like Brillo pad. It could be the first shot, it could be the 1,000, but at some point in time you're gonna pull the trigger, okay, and they're gonna spread out. And I was real disappointed. He started talking about the collector value and everything else. I said, "Well, you don't understand. I don't care anything about the value. This gun, it has no monetary value. It's almost a spiritual value. Brian, I want to shoot this gun."
Absolutely.
And he bust out laughing. He said, "Well, that's easy." He said, "Send the gun down to Briley, get it bored out, put some 20 gauge sleeves in it, and go hunt with it, son, with these modern conventions." And so that's exactly what I did over the course of the next year. I took it to a local gunsmith I've known since high school. And one of the springs had gone bad. Couldn't buy it anywhere. He had to make them. And then we sent it down to Briley after we got the action in working order. We sent it down to Briley. They bored out the 12 gauge, bored it out to where we could put those 20 gauge sleeves in it. I contacted Boss Shot Shells. They made me some 2 3/4 inch, super low recoil shells. I'm gonna guess they fly 1,000 to 1,100 foot per second, because with wood that old, I was scared to death. I'd pull the trigger and the stock would splinter on me.
Yeah.
And I went out duck hunting with a friend of mine, Jim Cruz, that's got a really nice break to hunt up in North Mississippi. And I showed up, and I had a cameraman with me, Jake Tondras. We were gonna film this passing of the torch, so to speak. And we were having drinks and eating lamb chops there at his cabin. And he said, "Ramsey, it's bad." He said, the duck, "It's the worst duck season we've ever had. The ducks aren't down. I don't have any ducks." He said, "My fingers crossed, we'll go out tomorrow morning. We'll shoot one duck." I said, "Jim, that's all I want to do is kill one duck." I want to kill one duck with this gun. But, you know, as compared to every shotgun I've ever shouldered, that old hammer gun has got the funniest, weirdest drop I've ever swung on. I mean, it feels like, it just got a real weird drop.
Sure.
As I was really sitting there against that cypress tree, hoping we'd see a duck to shoot at that morning, I was thinking, Lord, what if one duck comes in and I miss? And besides that, it's old hammer gun, these old rabbit ears, when do you even pull one back? When the duck, boy, let me tell you what, that old mallard duck flew over right to crack of dawn, 5 minutes after legal. Whack, 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 we called to him. He hooks around a clump of cypress and lays up, coming right in. I knew just when to click it back. And on the first shot, he clapped his wings and died. And the duck guy, it's like I felt like my ancestors awakened the duck gods, because every duck in Coahoma County wanted to come into that duck hole that morning, and I couldn't miss with the old gun.
That's amazing. And
it really was. And then we took pictures. We had a great time, and I put the gun back up. One thing, that old gun has got some green paint on the buttstock, and when I sent it to the gunsmith to get it reworked and make sure everything was in working order, he asked me, he said, "Don't you want me to go ahead and refinish these stocks?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, it's just that old green paint on there." I said, that green paint could have been a barn, it could have been a duck boat, it could have been a duck blind. Don't dare take it off.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that came to be, and it was, and it does mean a lot to me. Every Christmas morning, now that the kids are too old for Santa Claus, they're grown people themselves, so everybody kind of sleeps and we do our thing. I get up at daylight. I get up before daylight. I drive an hour over to camp. There's not another living soul there. Sometimes one or both of my sons go, and it's culminated in the past 10 years in just kind of because Christmas is a sentimental holiday. I mean, it's a family holiday of all holidays, and my gun of choice that morning is I go back to that 1970s era Remington 1100, no vent rib. It was my grandfather's gun. He gave it to me when I was in high school. I assumed it'd be the only gun I'd ever own, and no, that ain't the way it worked out with steel shot and everything else. But every Christmas morning, I take it and I oil it and I get it ready to go, and I go out and I go shoot ducks with it. And it ain't about the gun. It's about, I tell you, isn't it something crazy? There's millions of those guns made, but sitting in a blind with my family and that shotgun, it connects me in a way that nothing else can to some of the stuff that's real important.
Yeah, it's a special feeling for sure. I appreciate you going into the story on that. That's I think I came across that on your YouTube channel. If anybody listening out there wants to see that video, it's pretty cool.
Thank you.